Episode 1. The Night Woman. Oh, knew my Godo no Moans echoed distinctly. In that large and luxurious room, ag darling, the voice of the woman resonated loudly and full of passion. She thoroughly enjoyed the steamy encounter of the body of the man beside her. A sweat poured profusely, dripping down every inch of her bare body. She relished her movements and games atop the well-built and muscular man, taking control of the game. She drove it with complete abandon. Each sway and move she displayed aimed to impress and satisfy the man beneath her. Unfortunately, the man remained motionless, offering no reciprocal actions to enhance their pleasure. The man tossed the naked woman aside from the bed. "Move aside," he said roughly and menacingly. "Darling, I haven't finished yet," she said, unsatisfied as her desires were interrupted by the forceful push from the strong and muscular man. "Get away from me," he said harshly with a deadly stare. "But, darling, I haven't made you enjoy it," she protested. The formidable man shouted loudly, calling his subordinates outside their room, who promptly entered. Yes. The towering man, with blue eyes and a muscular physique, was Joe Biden, 32 years old, a notorious Mafia boss, wealthy, and known for his cruelty. Additionally, he was dubbed a playboy for his frequent flings. Not satisfied with just one woman, he spent more time with his spade companions. Almost every night, he indulged with different women, none daring to refuse him due to his looks, wealth, and power. Many desired his position, but it wasn't easy, requiring someone who could conquer not only his body, but also his heart. "Quickly, take her away from here," he ordered his loyal subordinates. "Sir, I'll handle it properly. Don't send away," pleaded the woman, hoping to stay with just one look. The subordinate understood, dragging the woman out of the room. "Here's your payment, Miss Agent Lavos." Lucky Luciano, Joe's assistant and friend, spoke. Yes, he assisted Joe in various ways, including waiting for the boss to satisfy his desires with his companions. "This is your clothing and payment. It's best if you leave before he kills you," Lucky threatened coldly. The woman hastily grabbed her belongings and ran out without a stitch on her body. Lucky shook his head at the foolishness. "She never changes, always acting as she pleases with women," Arvin commented, shaking his head, then entering his boss's room. Yes. They were now in one of Joe's show tools whenever he desired satisfaction. He brought his companions to this place, releasing his urges in the dark and eerie room. It was called the horror. The atmosphere inside was terrifying, carrying a negative aura. When all lights were off, only the outside light through the window illuminated their room. Lucky entered, turning on all the all-mounted lights, brightening their room. Everything became clear, revealing Joe, clad only in a towel around his waist, casually sitting with legs folded, right hand holding a cigar, occasionally puffing and exhaling with pleasure. "What's wrong with you? Every night, you ask me to bring women for you, but before anything happens, you drive them away. Don't tell me you've lost your virility," Lucky taunted him. "Shut up." Joe calmly smoked his cigar, staring blankly ahead. "Do you want me to find and bring another woman for you?" Lucky asked. "Forget it. I've lost interest. None of women you bring can satisfy and make me feel alive," Joe said. Just admit that you've lost your potency if you listen to Myopas. Get married and don't waste your youth like this," Lucky suggested. Brack with one swift kick, Harvin was sent flying from his chair due to Joe's unexpected strong kick. "Damn it," Lucky groaned in pain, startled by the unexpected kick. Lucky tried to stand up and fix his clothes. He knew better than to prolong the argument with somebody as stubborn as Joe. "Oh, by the way, What about Lewis? Has he contacted you? Lucky asked Joe. Why are you asking me? It's your job. Joe became more irritated with the inappropriate question. Until now, I haven't heard from him. I thought you took care of it. Lucky said, guessing. Quickly find out his whereabouts and bring him to me. If necessary, drag him here by force. Joe ordered Lucky to bring Mr. Lewis to him. All right. Oven promptly obeyed the boss's order without resistance. Episode 2. Mr. Lewis' anxiety. Ring ring ring, who is it? Dad, the red-haired girl asked while sitting with her parents, watching the TV in front of them. Her father's face instantly turned red with fear upon seeing the caller's name on his phone. Dad, who is it? Why do you look so tense? His daughter inquired. They were the Lewis family. Mr. Lewis was extremely frightened as his phone rang for the second time. Dad, give me the phone. Let Adna handle it, Adna suggested. Adna Lewis, 22 years old, the only daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Lewis. She was a cheerful and beautiful girl. Not only friendly but also with a very gentle heart. Adna had an ideal physique, beautiful face, blue cornea, and long, lovely brown hair. Dad, what's wrong? She asked again. Noticing her father's lack of reaction, Dad, she called as he snapped back with a gentle touch on his shoulder. Mr. Lewis held his trembling phone, visible to both his daughter and wife. Dad, are you not feeling well? Adna asked, concerned. Mr. Lewis's pale face was evident. Hello, who am I speaking to? Adna, unable to bear seeing her father trembling with fear, took the phone from him and answered the call, inquiring about the caller's identity. Despite no name displayed on the screen, Mr. Lewis was certain it was from his boss, the person he borrowed money from. Where is that man? A harsh voice could be heard, cursing and addressing Adna's father with disrespect. Who are you? Why do you call my father that? Adna protested against the offensive language. No response. The man fell silent upon hearing Adna's soft voice. Hello. Why are you silent? Explain to me. Who are you? What's your issue with my father that you address him with such disrespectful terms? Adna tried to inquire from the mysterious caller. Give the phone to your father. I have business with him, the mysterious man said to her. No. Tell me, because my father can't be disturbed right now. Adna refused to hand the phone over to her father, not wanting him to hear such disrespectful words. Very well. Listen carefully to my words. If your father cannot settle all his debts with me in the next 2 days, we will seize and forcefully take all his assets, the man threatened with a terrifying ultimatum. Adna couldn't say anything. She was shocked and couldn't believe what she had just heard. The person who called Mr. Lewis was Lucky, Joe's assistant. Both of them were equally ruthless. There was no difference. Dealing with either of them meant preparing for the bitter consequences. He didn't say anything. His daughter took the call, Lucky calmly explained. When Lucky mentioned his daughter, Joe's face and expression changed drastically. Initially, he appeared ordinary. But after hearing Lucky's explanation, his face suddenly brightened. Repeat that. His daughter? Joe asked, continuing to repeat the information. Yes. The one who answered my call was not that old man, his daughter, Lucky reiterated. Kid, said Joe. Good. Good for what? The old man didn't say anything to me, so what's good about it? Lucky was puzzled by Joe's reaction. You're so foolish. Be careful. Move out of my way. Don't obstruct my path, Joe said, standing up and walking towards the window in his room. He gazed with a smile outside the window. Everything looked beautiful with the city lights illuminating the beautiful night. Added to that was the rare, beautiful smile displayed by Joe Barnard. It had been a long time since he smiled so beautifully, and with just one word uttered by Lucky, he could smile again. Lucky, accidentally witnessing the beautiful smile on his boss's lips, became even more confused. "Boss, are you smiling?" Lucky asked him while approaching. "Do whatever it takes to make sure he can't settle his debts with me, and make him beg and plead with me to take his daughter, if possible, buy them with money. I'm sure they won't refuse when they see a sum of money shown in front of their faces, and I'm sure that women will beg and kneel before me to be with me, like other street women," Joe said with pride and confidence. "And I'm sure that women will beg for me to lay with her, and crawl onto my bed, enjoying the prowess of my long hair missile, ha ha ha." Joe laughed, imagining what would happen later. Lucky didn't say anything. He just remained silent, listening to his boss's laughter that couldn't be predicted. "All right, boss. Let's see what happens in the next 2 days," Lucky said. "Don't make me angry. Do what I told you earlier, anyway. Make them submit to me no matter how." Joe was angry. "Yes, all right," Lucky agreed. Meanwhile, at Mr. Lewis's home. "Dad, what does he mean? Debts? Adna doesn't understand, Dad." Adna still couldn't believe what the mysterious man who spoke to her had said. Mr. Lewis was almost fainting and breathless. He couldn't bear the tightness in his chest anymore. He suddenly fell onto the sofa nearby. Dad, what happened?" His wife and daughter were both panicking, seeing the alarming condition of their father. "Please get some water for Dad," Adna shouted to her housemaid. Shortly after, the housemaid came running with a drink for her employer. "Here, miss," the maid said. "Dad, please drink and calm yourself. Dad, don't panic like that." Adna tried to calm her father down. Lewis followed everything Adna said, and slowly he started to feel better. Dad, what happened? What's going on? What's the problem?" his wife asked, sitting beside him and gently stroking his back. "Yes, Dad, what happened? Tell Adna and Mom. Don't make us worry and scared like this," Adna said, massaging her father's hands with love and affection. Mr. Lewis took a slow breath and exhaled, then embraced his two beloved women. "Forgive me, my dear, I truly apologize," Mr. Lewis said with tears streaming down. He couldn't bear to see his daughter and wife fall apart with him. But alas, the rice had become porridge. "Well, what's wrong?" "Adna doesn't understand," Adna said. "Dad owes money to the man who just called. Dad promised to settle it today. But Dad's prediction was wrong. Dad thought he could settle it by borrowing some money from the bank. But the loan was rejected because they blocked all of Dad's avenues," Mr. Lewis explained with a heavy heart. "And if Dad can't settle all of his debts, then..." Mr. Lewis couldn't continue his sentence. "Then what? Dad?" Adna became more frightened and sad. "You to calm down. Don't think about this issue. Let Dad handle it. Focus on your studies, and I will resolve this problem soon," Mr. Lewis reassured his daughter and wife. They hugged each other, a family supporting each other. Episode 3. Mafia Boss's Threat. 2 days later, numerous black cars were seen, parked in front of Mr. Lewis's house. Adna, who had just returned from a campus, felt uneasy and scared seeing so many cars parked outside her house. "Sir, why are there so many cars?" she asked one of the security guards on duty at the front gate. "That, miss, The security guard was also puzzled about how to explain it to Adna. "What is it?" Adna asked in panic. "You better go inside." The security guard avoided explaining further. Adna hurriedly entered and parked her car in front of her house hastily. She couldn't wait to meet her parents, and was deeply afraid that something might happen to them. "Why are there so many people dressed in black here?" she said, observing the muscular man standing in formation. Creak. The door opened, and Adna rushed inside her house. But shortly after, her steps halted as she saw her parents kneeling on the floor, surrounded by tall, muscular figures. "Father, mother," she said softly, caught the attention of the large man, and all eyes turned to her. "Father, mother." "What's happening?" she asked, bewildered, approaching her parents. "Let's stand up, both of you." Adna helped her parents to their feet. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Adna asked loudly and emotionally. Joe then stood up and approached Adna. It turned out that the one assaulting Mr. Lewis's house was Joe Biden and his entourage. "I know you can't possibly repay all your debts to me," Joe said, gripping Adna's chin very tightly. Let go of me." "How dare you?" Adna protested. "Ha ha ha." Joe laughed loudly in response to Adna's outburst. "I promise, sir. Give me more time. I will try harder to repay all my debts to you," Mr. Lewis pleaded, continuing to beg for leniency. "Ha ha ha." Joe laughed even louder. "Who do you think you are?" His face suddenly turned fierce. Joe walked towards Mr. Lewis and choked his throat so strongly that he struggled to breathe. "Release your hands from my father," Adna shouted, trying to hit Joe's muscular arm. "Let's make a deal. If you want to survive and keep your family safe, just give your daughter as collateral," Joe said casually. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, as well as Adna, were horrified, unanimously shaking their heads in disagreement. "I won't follow you. Don't think that being rich and powerful allows you to do this to our family. I will sue you for threats and fraud," Adna proclaimed angrily. "Ha ha ha." Joe's laughter erupted. "Your daughter is quite brave," Joe added. Slap, slap, slap. 3 slaps hit Adna's face. Pain mingled with bitterness. Blood oozed from the corner of her mouth due to the slaps administered by Joe in her cheek. "Who do you think you are, foolish woman? Don't be arrogant. Your dignity alone is not enough to settle your father's debts to me. Even if I sell you to those redacted places, it won't be enough to cover those debts," Joe said sarcastically. Unable to endure Joe's treatment anymore, Mr. Lewis pleaded with Joe to stop hurting his beloved daughter. Joe pulled Adna's hair forcefully, squeezing her chin again. "Don't try to resist and deal with me," Joe threatened Adna with his sharp gaze. Adna became even more frightened, but she tried to hide her fear. "I know who you are. A cruel and evil person I've ever met in my life. And I know that no one can match your power in this world. But you should also know that someday you will fall and beg like this, just as you are doing to this family. And when those days come, I will be the first to laugh at your suffering." She said, with a bitter smile, and spat on Joe's face with courage. After hearing Adna's sharp words, Joe couldn't contain his emotions. He pushed Adna until she stumbled and fell to the ground, her face hitting the edge of a nearby glass table. "Ah!" Adna screamed in pain. "Sir, please don't do that. She doesn't know anything about this," Mr. Lewis pleaded, kneeling at Joe's feet. Crack. Joe didn't want anyone to touch him. He kicked Mr. Lewis away. As assault, Mr. Lewis flew far, and his head hit a chair. "Father!" Adna and her mother shouted simultaneously. "Father! Your head is injured," Adna said, unable to bear it any longer. She stood up and wanted to retaliate against Joe for his treatment of her father. "How dare you hit and kick my father?" Adna tried to hit Joe, That head swiftly grabbed her tiny hand and held it tightly. Let go. My hand hurts. Let go. Adna shouted in pain. It seems your daughter is as stubborn as you are, Joe said, squeezing Adna's chin again and throwing her small body towards her parents. Quickly. Take this crazy woman away from me, Joe ordered his henchman. Adna was pulled away by Joe's henchman, trying to plead for forgiveness from Joe. Quickly get rid of this madwoman from me, Joe shouted again. Episode 4. Pawned Lives. Quickly drag that old man, Joe yelled again, filling the room with the dramatic scene. No one dared to stop Joe from expressing his anger. Mr. Lewis was forcibly pulled and dragged by Joe's henchman roughly. Adna couldn't bear to see her father in such a state, so she approached Joe again, pleading at his feet with deep sadness. Sir, forgive my father. Please don't do this to him. I promise to do whatever it takes to settle my father's debts, even if it means becoming your servant, Adna said without hesitation, her voice mixed with sobs and stuttering. She didn't know what else to do to prevent her father from being treated so harshly. She couldn't hold back anymore. It was heartbreaking for her to witness someone she loved so much being treated this way. Joe's steps halted upon hearing words coming from the girl. Let him go. Joe ordered his henchman to release Mr. Lewis. It seems your courage only goes as far, little girl, Joe said. I promise to follow any of your commands, as long as you don't hurt me parents, and I promise to repay all my father's debts to you, Adna pleaded. Fine, Joe agreed. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis felt helpless. They couldn't do anything. Parents, please don't worry, Adna will be fine. She reassured and tried to convince her parents not to be anxious. Adna, your name is beautiful. Joe kept repeating Adna's name. Return all his assets and treat them well. If his daughter misbehaves, eliminate them without mercy, ordered Lucky, threatening the wee family. Yes, boss. Lucky acted swiftly and decisively. And you, little girl, don't you dare attempt anything foolish or try to escape from me. I won't hesitate to kill them all, including those who have been working with your family all this time. Joe threatened her. Adna nodded in understanding. Don't think our business ends here. You're just collateral for your father's debt. I want you to serve me wholeheartedly and refrain from any actions that may harm yourself or our family, understand? Joe continued to treat Adna roughly, smearing her flawless face. Adna remained silent. She didn't say anything more. And they all left Mr. Lewis's house. Come inside, miss. Lucky offered a ride in one of the cars for Adna. Adna and Joe didn't get into the same car. Nevertheless, Adna was closely guarded by Joe's henchmen to prevent her from escaping. Meanwhile, Mr. Lewis felt something missing in his world. He fell and wept bitterly, seeing his beloved daughter being taken away by that infamously cruel man. Sigh. Wake up. Let's just pray that Adna is okay, and hopefully, Joe won't mistreat her. Mrs. Louise encouraged her husband not to be disheartened. Unfortunately, there was no other solution for their family but to surrender their daughter to that ruthless man. All the workers who had been at the house witnessed the events, feeling pity and sorrow for Thelwee family. Despite their wealth, they were humble and generous. They were honest in their business, but misfortune struck them due to their honesty. Flashback at a business meeting. Mr. Lewis was present, negotiating a business deal and collaboration with another company for a major project in a foreign country. He trusted his business partners so much that he granted them full authority to execute a project. He had allocated all the funds for that project, but little did he know that his trust and honesty would be betrayed. His business partners, absconded with all the money he had prepared, leaving no trace until now. With all the responsibilities for that project falling on Mr. Lewis, how could he complete it without any funds? In the end, he resorted to borrowing and even mortgaging his company and all his assets to the powerful Joe Barnard. That was the beginning of his dealings with the notoriously cruel Joe Biden. Despite his efforts to seek financial help from his other business partners, they seemed indifferent, and he even mocked and ridiculed his bankruptcy and foolishness. As the days passed, the pressure from the workers to pay their wages and purchase construction materials for the project increased. If not completed within the specified time, all the risks would be on him. Considering pawning all his assets and borrowing money from Joe seemed like the only way to solve F problems. Initially, all the issues related to the collaboration and that project were resolved successfully. However, he faced a new problem. He had to repay all the loans he had agreed upon with Joe. He had tried desperately to find the funds, but his efforts were rejected. In the end, his daughter became their guarantee for his debts. With no other options, he had to accept it, or his entire family would be destroyed and left with nothing. Episode 5, Mafia Bosses Past. 3. The sound of the car brakes came to a precise stop in the vast, elegant yard. They had arrived at Mr. Joe's enormous mansion, centrally located in the city. The luxurious mansion occupied an incredible expanse of land, large enough to build around 100 family cars on it. However, on this vast land, only his mansion stood, adorned with various decorations and gardens inside. If someone were to visit the mansion for the first time, they would be staggered and might even faint at the sight of Joe Biden's wealth. It could take 2 full days to tour the mansion. Just imagine. The distance from the main entrance to the mansion's gate would take a full hour. But Joe's possessions didn't end with just this vast and luxurious mansion. He owned numerous other businesses, including several casinos in different corners of the city and even in other countries. Anything related to these casinos was under his scrutiny. In addition, he owned several other larger buildings. He achieved success through his own efforts and hard work, while some people could amass wealth through questionable means. It was different for him. He became rich and successful through honest and consistent means. Once, he was a warm and sociable man with a gentle heart. Many people praised his friendliness and generosity. Little did they know he underwent a drastic change due to a betrayal by his former lover. His life transformed because of the heartbreak he endured. The woman he loved dearly betrayed him by choosing a wealthier man. At that time, he wasn't as rich and powerful as he is now. He only had a small company inherited from his late father. However, after that incident, he resolved to become wealthier than his ex-lover's new partner. He was determined to make his former lover beg for forgiveness and come back to him, and all his desires were fulfilled through his hard work and efforts. Over the years, however, he never saw his former lover again. Their last encounter was when she ended their relationship, and he never bothered to find out her whereabouts. He hoped that she would know of his success wherever she was. Day by day, he led a strict life, indulging in changing partners. Frequently, he vented all his anger and resentment on every woman he encountered, hurting each one of them. For him, every woman was like his ex-lover, if not worse, and his heart had truly frozen, covered by his vengeance. Despite that, sometimes he still hoped for the return of that woman, his ex-lover. His feelings of love and hate had merged. He couldn't distinguish between the two. Bring her in. Joe ordered his henchman to take Adna inside his mansion. This was the first time he brought even a stranger, let alone a woman, into his mansion. This startled all residents, those who worked in the mansion, but none dared to question. Adna remained silent, observing every corner of the room. Each room was adorned with beautiful decorums, undoubtedly of fantastic value. The design of his mansion was truly impressive and inspiring. "What do you see?" Joe asked when he noticed Adna observing. Intently, feeling summoned, Adna turned her face to look at Joe. He walked toward his luxurious sofa, sitting down casually and authoritatively, folding his legs. "I'm sure you're impressed with my place, aren't you?" Joe asked her. Adna remained silent, not saying or. Joe, displeased by being ignored, became angry. "Look at me and answer every question I ask," Joe demanded. Adna continued her silent mode. "Yes. I know you can't say anything because of the luxury and wealth I possess, and you know many women would want to be with me to enjoy my luxury and wealth. But it's not easy. If they want to taste it, they have to be willing to serve me, including you," Joe said casually and proudly. Adna, refusing to be equated with those promiscuous women, stared defiantly at Joe. "How dare you look at me like this?" Joe walked towards her, muttering, then grabbed Adna's hair forcefully. "Ah!" Adna cried out in pain. His large, muscular hand caused her head to ache from the force of tug. "And don't ever hope to enjoy or experience that pleasure. I brought you here just to make you my slave until that old man can pay off all his debts," Joe declared. "HMPH, you're wrong, honorable Ma. Joe Biden. Dreaming about. Enjoying what you're talking about. I'd rather dream. You're so proud of having many women and even enjoying your nights with your promiscuous women. And for me, you're nothing more than a bastard. You're so easily giving your body to be enjoyed by those street women. If you were truly an honorable and respected man, you'd know that an honorable person isn't easily approached, seduced, or even merely for body pleasure," Adna said firmly while mocking Joe. PLAKKKK. A very hard slap landed on Adna's cheek. Continue to episode 6 and beyond. Don't forget to comment. This story is purely fictional and made up. If there are any similarities in the names of characters, places or events, it is purely coincidental and not intentional.